Well, hello everyone. Slightly surreal coming through. The nearest you'll get to a French window in this production. I'm Janice Forsyth. A very warm welcome to the Royal Lyceum Theatre for this curtain raiser event. You may or may not know we are actually recording this for a BBC Radio Scotland programme. It's the Culture Cafe, and we broadcast a week today on BBC Radio Scotland at 1:15. And of course, like all BBC programmes, available to listen again on the BBC iPlayer.
Keep it
Right,
going.
plug over. In just a couple of hours, the stellar cast of the Lyceum's new production of The Cherry Orchard will take to this very stage in this brand new, very Scottish adaptation of Chekhov's last great play. So please, a huge welcome for the multi-talented award-winning playwright and artist responsible for the adaptation, Mr. John Byrne. It is very strange walking through that door into the set, isn't it?
I walked on doing stuff on the scenery along with Michael Taylor, who did the most beautiful design, but not there was no audience in at the time.
You're such a dapper man and so multi-talented. Did you ever think of acting?
No, God, no. I think I was once asked to do something. I can't remember what it was, and I just corpsed the whole time. I don't know how people do it. Honestly, don't. I've got great admiration for actors.
Well, let's talk about Chekhov, because this is your third adaptation of Chekhov, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
The Seagull, and indeed Uncle Vanya, or Uncle Varric, as it was called in your version, which we saw here. I'll just do that again for the sake of the radio programme. This is your third adaptation of Chekhov, following The Seagull and Uncle Vanya, or Uncle Varric, as it was in your adaptation, John, with Brian Cox notably in the title role here. So, the big question, what draws you to Chekhov's work?
I always loved Chekhov, and he's so hard to adapt. I think the first one I had a look at with thoughts of adapting was Three Sisters. And the first couple of lines are, I am wearing black because my father died this day. And I go, it's all, to me it was all exposition, and I don't go in for exposition, so I never tackled Three Sisters. I haven't tackled Three Sisters. But you realise why it does that when you read about a Chekhov, and but it's very, very difficult to adapt.
How long did it take you? I'm just wondering when you first...
this one?
No, just generally with Chekhov, that whole thing you're talking about, but exposition, because that is the popular conception or misconception that you have lots of characters on stage telling you lots of stuff about how they feel in a way that people wouldn't really do or whatever, and there's a big barrier for folk first time to come to it.
Certainly when you do it now, if you were writing, really. And I had to find ways around it.
When did you first pick up did you read it or did you see it first?
No, I think the first Chekhov I saw was an Uncle Vanya with Laurence Olivier in it on the television.
Right.
And that was a long, long time ago. And I've heard Chekhov in the wireless, and I've seen a couple of Chekhovs on stage, and they always moved me greatly. But it was only when I came to read Chekhov, and I thought, God, that doesn't seem to do the same thing at all. It's not like when you look at the nuts and bolts, and that doesn't tell you much about it at all. I mean, it's quite extraordinary they are plays, and they have to be seen as plays, and that's when you get the full impact. But I don't like reverential Chekhov at all. There was one on Radio 3 recently to celebrate whatever anniversary it was, 150 years of reverential Chekhov productions. It was unspeakable, in my opinion. It really was. It was all the quavering voices and the sadness. It was actually The Cherry Orchard, the adaptation, and it was very true to, I imagine, the 1904 production, and it sounded like it was just ghastly.
Because there seemed to be a lot of controversy even with that first production, because Stanislavski directed it, and if what I read is true, Chekhov was like, it's a comedy, but he very much directed it as a tragedy. And I believe even Chekhov's wife, she was moved to tears, which isn't to say that perhaps you shouldn't be, but the thread of comedy is very important, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, he calls it a comedy for a reason, because he loved comedy. And you see a lot of productions that aren't very funny at all. And you keep thinking that maybe that's because I'm not Russian, but it's just because they're not very funny.
That is a question, though, isn't it? I mean,
I know, it really is.
Translation.
Yeah. I mean, if you did one of my plays, which is, one of the ones that's in patois, and did it in, I don't know what, Malayan or something, I mean, you wouldn't think it was very funny at all. You'd go, pretty ghastly.
Although, funnily enough, recently I interviewed the film director Alex Cox, who spotted an actor for one of his Mexican films because he saw him in a Mexican production of The Slab Boys.
No,
I'm not making it. You couldn't make that up, and I've just remembered it now.
You couldn't make it up.
So let's remind ourselves then about the basic setup of the scene when the curtain rises on this production, and you've changed the names, not to protect the innocent. You've changed quite a lot, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, Mrs. Ramsay Mackay seemed to be a fair approximation for Ranovskaya, and McCracken seemed to be a good pseudonym for Lopakin.
Yeah.
And that's as far as I got, I think. Fears became Fintry, which is a good old northeastern name. I ran out of names with Yepi Hodoff and called him Sorley Shanks. And Varia in the original becomes Vari, obviously. And Anya becomes Ainsley.
What was the process? Because I believe it wasn't a particularly smooth one initially when you were given this task of adapting it. Because you have, obviously, you set it in Scotland, just after the Winter of Discontent, 1979.
But that didn't come initially at all. I originally set it in the May of 1968, and they were coming back from Paris and the student revolution in Paris, and they brought Yasha, who was called Jean Kiki, from Paris with them. And I've lost that draft. Well, it's somewhere, but I haven't seen it for a while. And then I went to 1982 in the next draft, and it became the Cherry Orchard Hotel, which was somewhere in Perthshire, because I couldn't believe there was a cherry orchard in Scotland that would provide any cherries. And by a slow process, I got to the point where I met up with Tony Cowney, the director who was going to direct it, and it was Tony who gave me the whole thing about the Winter of Discontent, the setting of it in that time, which was brilliant, and that was it. And then I wrote it from there.
Is that process you've described of several drafts, and not just drafts where you're maybe finessing it, but you're completely changing it. Is that something you've been through before with other adaptations, or did the Cherry Orchard prove particularly challenging for you?
I think, as far as I remember, Uncle Vanya was quite challenging as well, but not as challenging as the Cherry Orchard, I must say. The Seagull, which has not been produced by anyone, no interest has been shown whatsoever, but you never can tell, was done some time ago. And that's finished, and it was set on a Hebridean island. And I can't remember when it was set, sometime in the 70s, early 70s. But it could be set any time, obviously.
I'm interested in the fact that your first setting wasn't Scotland, given what you just said about the Seagull and what you've ultimately done with the Cherry Orchard. Did it just seem that Paris 1968, that ferment just seemed absolutely
that was
fitting?
Returning from Paris to Scotland, and in a different feel entirely. But I think it was so remote. I mean, it's only a few older people remember the 1968 debacle. There was lots of reference to Daniel LaRouge.